Hi, I'm Femi Oke and you're in the stream. Today, tensions are running high in Macedonia. Protesters and the government are in a standoff as the country faces its deepest political crisis yet. Is the Balkan nation's stability under threat? You can get a really good idea of what's happening in Macedonia from being on social media. Our digital producer Malika Balau has been digging around for us. What did you find?
Well, we put some of what we found in the stream's new app, and that's where you'll find pictures of the ongoing anti-government protests. You'll also find GIFs like this one. Now, we're hearing from people on the ground who are at the protests. This is one person, Bolero, who says there are provocateurs from time to time trying to destabilize the peace, but for the most part, peaceful people that have had enough of this government are there on the street. So we want to hear from you, whether you're at the protest or outside of Macedonia. You can tweet us your thoughts with hashtag AJStream.
More on Macedonia coming up in a moment, but first, we're always keeping a lookout for what's making news in your part of the world. Here are just a few of the hashtags that caught our eye. Macedonia is coming off 2 days of mourning following a military operation in the town of Kumanova that left more than 20 people dead and the nation reeling. Details remain unclear, but government officials say they were able to kill and arrest many who had planned attacks on Macedonian landmarks. NATO and EU officials are expressing concern and calling for an investigation amid fear of rising ethnic tension. The weekend violence comes as Macedonia deals with its worst crisis since independence. That was back in 1991. For weeks, anger over allegations of electoral fraud and authoritarian rule against Prime Minister Nikola Gruevski has spilled onto the streets. The opposition party has been leaking audio recordings that, if authentic, appear to show the government's complicity in criminal activity. Recently, protesters and police crossed paths in a fury of water cannons and smoke bombs. Joining me to discuss what's happening in Macedonia right now from Skopje, we have Andrea Bogdanovski. He's a security analyst with the Analytica think tank. Also in Skopje, Jasmina Golovska is a political analyst for the Helsinki Committee for Human Rights of the Republic of Macedonia. She's an activist and anti-government protester. From The Hague, Nikola Dimitrov is Macedonia's former ambassador to the US and now a fellow at the Hague Institute. And in Skopje, we have Svetin Chilamanov. He is a journalist for the Macedonian Information Agency. It's good to have you all here in the stream, everybody. Yasmina, you were out protesting earlier today. Who's out on the streets in Macedonia? Who's protesting?
Thank you for inviting me on your show, and let me give my kind regards to the audience that is now following us. Firstly, let me improve the wording of the show, and I would like to say that I am not an anti-government protester, I am anti-mafia protester. Anti-mafia protester of a system that has been established within the state, thus pushing the state to a fast decline economically and otherwise, and security-wise, in accordance to the last things that happened in the city of Kumanova. I have been protesting not from today, but for the last 4 years. We've been on the street on for different reasons and with different groups, mainly protesting for the general freedoms and rights for the people, including poverty, including worker rights, and then again, health rights and access to health rights, social and other types of security. However, at this moment, we found ourselves backlogged by what happened in Kumanovo. However, that does not mean that we won't continue protesting against a government, at least as it is declared,
Okay.
but against the mafia that has clinched the system and has taken it to a hole.
Andrea, who do you think is out protesting right now? Yasmina gave us lots of different reasons, but she didn't tell us who was out there. Who's out there?
Thank you very much. Very interesting question. Well, I mean, we first need to take into account that protests in Macedonia were kind of idle in the last several years. Now, all of a sudden, we have number of protests taking place. I mean, different type of actors are going on the streets in Skopje. For example, several weeks ago, we had the professors protesting of the universities. Now we're having high school students protesting as well. So different strength of the different type of actors in Macedonian society are protesting. Speaking specifically about this protest that we're talking about on this show, we're seeing protests by people or activists asking for government reshuffle, asking for governments to step down, and asking for democratization of the country because of the leaks from wiretapped material that the main opposition is leaking in the last several months since February this year. So in specifics, we are talking about people protesting because some of the leaks suggested allegations of what appeared to be the government officials trying to cover murder of a young man who was killed brutally by a police officer in 2011.
Right. Melita?
Well, just to give you a little taste of who is out there protesting, we're actually seeing pictures from people who are tweeting the stream. This is from Philip, who says, every day at 6 p.m., that's one of the slogans people are using, people gathering at a peaceful protest in front of the government building, access blocked again. You can see this picture. Here's another picture I wanted to share. This is from Philip also. He says, he shows a man with a Bible telling policemen, these people, the protesters, are paying your salaries. You can see the man there standing there. So, Svitin, when you see pictures like this and you see people using these different hashtags to describe the people out there, how would you describe the protests and what's going on?
Well, essentially, Macedonia is a former communist country, and in the past 9 years, this is the first prolonged period the country has had a conservative free market government, which has been working to radically reform the economy, the way it's positioned, to return property taken during the communist times, to bring in foreign investment. The protesters are broadly coming from the left. Philip, as you mentioned, he's essentially an activist in a far-left organization, which have been essentially protesting in the past 5-6 months. Very often it's the same group of people protesting against, in one case, tax increases, in another case, education reforms. This all got a bit more serious with what we have, which is an apparently very broad security breach of communication over the past years, in which apparently a former spy chief of the Macedonian former communist intelligence service, currently reformed but not fully reformed, who has been running a ring to wiretap communication. So far, we have only heard communications from the government. Presumably, this ring has been wiretapping others as well. These audio recordings have been given to the opposition. So, in a sense, we have a Assange situation or an Edward Snowden situation, except that in this case, the leaker has not fled to Russia, but this is the leader of the opposition who is holding regular press conferences and presenting this material that has been given to him.
See, Nicola, I'm just...
I would like to jump in.
Go ahead, Yasmina.
Just quickly. I would like to remind everyone, especially in the audience and maybe our guest speakers today, that the information from the leaked materials confirmed our struggle as activists for the last 5 years that we are on the streets. This is not a situation whereas a government, a right-wing government, especially with indication that likes to establish free market, is being under attack. This is a very grave situation, whereas we, the citizens, got information on how the government actually controls society. So I would like to, at the start, just to remind our speakers that we are discussing a grave breach of the people's freedoms, especially of the voters' rights, of their security, of their well-being, and mostly privacy. No one feels safe in this country, regardless of the source of information. So I don't like this show to move to a propaganda or to even certain level of debate on only on those wiretap materials, but also on the primary thing, which is the breach of human rights of people, of all people of the Republic.
Yasmina, take a breath for a moment. I want to bring Nicola into this conversation. Nicola, if we're watching from outside of Macedonia, let me just show the world where Macedonia is. If you're in the Balkans, forgive this map, it's very simple. But let's fly into this part of Europe. You can see it now. We've got the Mediterranean obviously down to the south. We have Macedonia north of Greece. So there it is. That's the place that we're talking about. So if you're watching this from outside of Macedonia, there's a couple of strange things. So you've got Kumanova, which at the weekend, some very strange activity went there, and the details are a little bit vague. And then you've got this wiretapping scandal where the opposition leader is leaking tapes which sound like, or apparently are members of the current administration talking about what would probably be criminal activity. From the outside, how do people make sense of what's going on?
It's really difficult to, I mean, as we all know, people tend to simplify the story.
Sure.
So I'll try to bring a bit of context. Macedonia is now 24 years old. And it has never really been a dream, a perfect democracy, if there is such a thing. But I don't think we have ever been so low. I mean, you have the Ministry of Interior saying, and we all recognize her voice, and I don't think that's deniable. They only say these are mentored and cut and edited tapes, saying, well, we have the party headquarters right next door, talking about the Ministry of Interior. When you have a party headquarters in the Ministry of Interior, I mean, the state does not exist anymore. So I really don't want for this political crisis to be, a struggle of one political party against another. We are facing a fundamental erosion of our institutions. And this is a fight of the citizens to get their institutions back. That's how I see it. And this culminates with protests, especially last week. Every day, people go in the streets, in big numbers. Mm. And then all of a sudden, we face this last weekend, a clash of the police forces with an armed group that is, according to the Ministry of Interior, a terrorist group.
All right, so Nicola, you're just revamping what we've pretty much been saying so far. And your context takes us where? What's going on? You're just telling us what we know's happened, but in a little bit more detail.
The big questions of the weekend is why.
Why, yeah.
It's a very difficult question because, on the contrary, I don't think I've seen the nation as united as it is today in terms of communities and interethnic groups. I mean, interethnically. You have the Macedonian flag, the Albanian flag together on the streets with these protests. So all the Albanian leaders, political leaders, civil society leaders, they say, we don't want war. We've seen that. We want a normal, decent life, a society governed by the rule of law. So, and then the second big question is, why now?
All right, Nicola, I'm asking you questions, you asking me questions right back. Let's see what the community is doing, Malika.
Well, they have some answers for why they want the government out, and that's several people that are telling us that. Right. This is Jane. She says, just name it. There's something from everything: corruption, election fraud, covering up murder. These are all allegations, of course. Extreme partisan of the state. Another person, Sandra, writes in something that I've seen a couple of times. She says, I don't think anyone trusts the government to address anything at this point. They should all just resign and be independently investigated. So, Andrea, what's behind sentiment like this?
Well, I think that what you're seeing on Twitter is really the sort of the main narrative that is on this social network. I would like to just follow up on the last tweet. There has been in the last several days a number of statements given by the international community, in particular the US, EU, United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Italy, saying that the government needs to address and to show the sort of will in terms of investigating the contents that that some of the people on Twitter have been talking about and what the media has been reporting. We have also certain ambassadors going as far as asking for resignations and reshuffling of the government cabinet. Now, we have heard from Prime Minister Gruevski that he would be interested in opening up investigation, but we haven't really seen any concrete follow-up on this.
No,
and
but
as I
there
mentioned,
is.
If I
international
may, I'd like to jump in
Andrea.
on this issue of trust.
Yes, Nicola?
I'm not sure if it's a story known internationally. I think in many countries it is known. The story of the shepherd boy and the wolf. And we are in the current sort of state of the public opinion in Macedonia, because we've seen government officials not quite telling the truth for so many times that these tapes appear to prove or show. It's really difficult to trust now anything they say. You know, there is a fundamental lack of credibility of the government institutions.
Yes, that's why I've just mentioned that there hasn't been a follow-up on the Prime Minister's idea to start up an investigation, and of course that after the leaks that we've heard, who will do the investigation? The system is not being trusted at the moment.
Let me just ask Svetin, because he works for the Macedonian Information Agency. What do you know about the investigation into the tapes, Svetin?
Of my knowledge, the opposition party has filed charges to the public prosecutor's office, and they have opened up cases. It remains to be seen the way these cases will be handled, but the Prime Minister has said on a number of occasions that he wants to have these, I agree, very serious allegations. The way they're presented by the opposition leader, they're pretty serious. Whether they're true depends to be proven and depends to be seen. The Prime Minister himself has said that he wants to have these allegations investigated. If wrongdoing is proven, in this case, he said that there will be responsibility on the part of the persons who have been charged. If the cases are seen as blown out of any proportion, which has happened in a number of press conferences held by the opposition. In this case, the Prime Minister has said that he wants to have the names of the persons who have been accused cleared off. Just to give a couple of examples, the opposition leader has held a press conference saying that he has evidence. Smina was saying before, the source of the leak. The opposition leader has said initially that the leaks, that the wiretapping has been performed on the part of the government. At this point, nobody believes this. But at one point, the opposition leader tried to say, well, we're going to prove that the leaks were performed by the government, that the wiretapping has been performed by the government.
All right, Svetin, I'm going to stop you for a little bit because everybody outside of Macedonia is having trouble keeping up with you. One thing that would be helpful to hear from you is, for your Prime Minister Gruevski, how is he dealing with these protests? Because they have got violent, they are pretty severe. There's another big one coming up, I believe, on the 17th of this month. Yeah. What is his strategy to deal with, obviously, there are a number of Macedonians who are very upset with how the administration is running things right now. What's his approach?
There were several thousand protesters protesting after one of the press conferences held by the opposition leader, by Mr. Zaev. And these protests were the ones which actually turned violent. The problem here, obviously, you have the right to protest, but in Macedonia, the custom is, and the law is that the organizer of the protests informs the police, tells them the route where the protesters are going.
Well, the protesters aren't stopping quite yet. In fact, Yasmina just came back from a protest. So I'm just,
but I really
Yasmina, hold tight for a second, because I'd like to get a clear answer, because we're actually just trying to, we really want to unpack what's happening. I'm not going to unpack it unless Svetin tells me, what is the government's approach to these protests, Svetin?
I think obviously they have the right to protest. This has been accepted. The thing is that there is the opposition party, in my view, should step up because these protests are essentially sparked by one of their press conferences, and they should acknowledge organizing the protest. And in this also informing the police of the route and things like this. We had a very dangerous incident during the violent evening of protests when one policeman essentially went forward and opened a small fence, which basically to allow the protesters not to trample over each other.
All right, Svetlana, take a breath for a second, everybody. I want to just bring in the community again because we're almost running out of time, and they want to ask some questions from you.
Well, Yasmin, I want to bring up a point that I am seeing online, and people saying that one of the government strategies, this is claims from people online, is a stirring up of ethnic tensions, and they worry that that could be used to distract people. So we're seeing tweets like this from Kaltrina. She says, the good inter-ethnic relations is something we're trying really hard to preserve. That's the only positive thing that's come out of this. And she goes on to say that can be seen with the latest protests in Macedonia, where you can see that we've never been more united. And by united, she means Macedonians and ethnic Albanians. So I see you nodding your head there. What's behind this?
Let me just jump into what Cvetin just said. First of all, it is not very polite to inform the public in such a manner. First of all, it is very easy for the audience to understand. Macedonia, by constitution, does claims that it's a social and democratic state, does declare itself as a welfare state, which is very known system to your audience and the broader audience that is following us. The right to protest, it's not limited, and by constitution, you don't have to inform the police on whether you are going to protest or not. The decline or incline of violence which happened on that protest was due to few people who clashed with the police. The excessive force when we were pushed out. Since I was there, so please let me just explain to the audience, since I was there, it is very polite if you let me say what was on the ground. When we were pushed out of the government space, at that moment, we did not represent a threat to the police, nor to the general public. What happened afterwards, we were chased down the streets.
Yasmina,
So
Can I jump in?
I've got 2 minutes, guests, and I just want to ask Yasmina, what is it that you want to happen? You're not going to stop protesting, I believe. What do you want to happen?
No, we are not. As the tweets say, we have never been united more in our lives. The ethnic tension is only a propaganda by the government or the people who have taken the government into their own hands. We are united and we want peace, justice, and democratization of institutions. So we need to bring our security, social and otherwise, especially social security, back to the citizens. We need to bring our state back. We need to bring our constitution back, and we need to bring our institutions back, which were hijacked by a government, which the wiretapping materials actually confirmed our anger and criticism throughout these years. So we are not protesting from the 5th of 5th, and we are not protesting only against the police. We are protesting against the people and the government.
You're protesting for these ideals, but what do you actually want to happen?
Those are not ideals. That is the constitution of the state.
What do you want to happen?
So we are actually protesting to protect the constitution of the state.
Right.
We want resignation of the whole government because we don't trust it. As the tweet previously said, that is the basic line of this issue. We don't trust the institutions. We don't trust they can protect us. We don't trust they can provide services as they should. So we would like a chance from the government to step down and give the people a chance.
Now we get it. The last 20 seconds of the show. Yasmina, the protesters want the current administration to step down. We have Yasmina, we have Andrea, Nicola and Cvetin. We are taking them to the post-show, stream.aljazeera.com, #AJStream. You can tweet Malika, and then hopefully your questions will be in the post-show. Thanks for watching. See you online. you want to start with ethnic? All right. Hello there. I was just discussing with Malika. I was like, what else do we have? And you said what?
Ethnic tensions, that's something that people are still talking about. It
Right.
actually pivots off of this operation that we saw a few days ago, where police, of course, entered the town of Komanov, and there was an operation to rid it of what the government said were terrorist elements. And so with that in mind, we got comments like this. This is from Vincent, and he says that it's impossible to verify government claims of the ministry, really, that armed men that they saw in Komanov were part of the KLA, or the Kosovo Liberation Army, basically elements from Albania. And even if it's true, he goes on to say, he tweets us, if it's really representing Albanians, could such a small group represent such a large people? And he says, I think the answer is clear, and his meaning, of course, is that no, they couldn't. But Nicola, could you take us into what is behind tweets like this? And the other one that I read earlier in the main show, when people said that the government is trying to stir up ethnic tensions, but people are staying strong. Could you take us between those two sentiments, really?
We don't really know who did this as of yet. We can only say who has an interest. And the effect of this weekend, this traumatic weekend for the country, has been that the attention and the focus is away from the scandals, and we are now all of a sudden very concerned about the stability in the country. That's one. And two, it's been the government and the prime minister who's been saying in the last few weeks, accusing the opposition that they are trying to stir up trouble. And if I may, I'll make two very brief points on the discussion previously. We can't resolve this crisis through the institutions of the state, because the institutions are contaminated. You can't trust the public prosecutor, because we all heard that he's been instructed by the Minister of Interior. We've all heard that judges are
Nicola,
ours
I've just
and
got
theirs.
some news. Actually, I've just got some news coming in right now. I'm gonna pause as I get it, because my producer's going to say into my ear. So your Prime Minister has asked the Interior Minister and the head of counterintelligence to step down. So that's literally just happened as we've been having this discussion. So they are no longer in their posts. We're just getting that news. So obviously I can't give you a number of different sources, but how does that play into what we've been discussing so far? Where does that fit in, Nicola?
It's a step in the right direction, for sure. I don't know if it will be enough, but it's definitely a step in the right, and it's the only decent thing that a political leader can do after facing such harsh allegations. So I welcome that if this really happens.
Right, yeah.
I would like to say that I'm pretty uncomfortable listening to this type of conspiracy theory that the government is the one which was trying to stir up ethnic trouble. This is a region which is full of battle-hardened people who have fought in Kosovo, who have fought in Macedonia in 2001. We already had one insurgency crisis, and the opposition in Macedonia is telegraphing weakness. Excuse me, Nicola. Excuse me, Nicola.
Don't know who did it. Right?
We have Malika phrased the question in the terms that this is the government stirring up trouble based on what people are posting on Twitter. We have had the opposition for 3 months telegraphing weakness of the country, saying that the government is about to collapse, is about to fall, knowing full well that we already suffered one insurgency in 2001 in which the government was essentially, the legitimate Albanian parties were kicked out in favor of an insurgency. And this, in my opinion, helped lay down the groundwork for any other adventurously looking explore this.
Let me just
ask-
let
Can
me
I
just
also jump in here as well?
Yeah, in fact, Andrea, I was actually going to ask you to jump in here, because I'm going to actually just go like 100 steps back from all of you, because when Macedonia was formed, it was formed out of different areas, so that a quarter of the population of Macedonia are ethnic Albanians, and the rest are, Andrea, just fill us in, because I think people watching may not understand what you mean by ethnic tensions. What is the population made up of, and why are people talking about ethnic tensions?
Sure. So basically, Macedonia is one of the countries that broke up from the former Yugoslavia in 1990, in the beginning of the 90s, and around 25% of its population, according to the census in 2002, is consisted of ethnic Albanians. which is quite considerable proportion. Now, at the end of the 1990s and the beginning of 2001, we were at the edge of an armed conflict of our own. And basically, the whole setup of the country was under threat. Thanks to diplomacy and thanks to political resolution of the crisis in August 2001, we came with a power-sharing agreement called the Ohrid Framework Agreement, which is one of those pillars of where Macedonia is at the moment and how it's organized, where ethnic Albanians, for example, and other ethnic groups are given more rights. So that's why Kumanovo, where the shooting took place, where the police action took place, consisted of considerable percentage of ethnic Albanian population living there. And in 2001, the area around Kumanovo was one of those that was heavily affected, not the city per se, but the area as such. So for many, this large-scale operation put parallel to the 2001 conflict. But can I just add something on what Svetlana and Nikola mentioned? I think that they agree on one thing, and that is that no one wants to have inter-ethnic tension in Macedonia, and that what we're seeing these days.
So is there, Andrea, is there ethnic tension from your perspective?
No, there is, at the moment, there is not an inter-ethnic tension. As Jasmina has mentioned, on the protests, we're seeing Macedonians, Albanians, and others being united as never before. We are seeing also a very constructive approach by the neighboring countries of Kosovo, Albania, whose leaders are condemning any sort of violence taking place in Macedonia, sending a message that they do not want the stability and the stability of Macedonia to be undermined. It's also important that every single political leader from the ethnic Albanians in Macedonia has condemned violence and has called for restraint and calmness in this situation. I truly hope that this would prevail.
Let me, if you allow, just to make another let's say correlation to what we just said. For example, the last 2 days, and what proves for us that the system is not going into a right direction, is the news produced only in these 2 days. First of all, it is a shame of the news that we have seen as citizens. We are ashamed of the journalism and the level of indecency towards the people who died in these days, the families and their grief. Secondly, those media were mentioned in the wiretapping materials as organized and constructed by high officials of the government in correlation to their owners. So all national TV stations are under governmental control. And what we see on that media is devastating. They are claiming that we have problems among the citizens along ethnic lines. Let me just remind you that in the Republic of Macedonia, there are not only Macedonians and Albanians, there are other ethnic communities as well. So the Roma are here, the Bosnians, the Serbs, and others. And that only reaffirms our position that what is done at the moment, it is pro-governmental propaganda to insert fear, which is fear to stop the protest, so people don't come out at the protest.
Jasmina, finish up your sentence. Because I want to bring Nikola in. Hold tight, I guess. Jasmina, finish your sentence.
Yes. Then again, I would also like to say to
that doesn't
the other
sound like
guests,
you're finishing your sentence. Jasmina, finish your sentence.
I will finish up. My father actually took part in the conflict of 2001 because he's a police officer who is now retired, and I can tell you that this does not resemble to 2001, and somebody is trying to make us think it resembles as 2001.
All right, I'm putting a period at the end of there. That is the end of Yasmina's sentence. Nicola, what did you want to add? Go ahead. We've got very little time, everybody. That's why I'm pushing you along.
Very briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think Macedonia is on the verge of an ethnic problem in terms of stability, but the political crisis is so deep, it makes the country fragile. So we cannot separate the two. If we want Macedonia to be stable and to continue to be stable, we need to resolve the political crisis as soon as possible.
Nicola, let me ask you back something that you asked me, or you asked hypothetically. Why now? Why is this happening now?
You mean the clashes over the weekend, or what's exact? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was your question. You answer it.
It's we have to look at the effect of that, and the effect is that it takes away the attention from the scandals, and it scares people. And they now say you can't even discuss sometimes the political issues because they say, well, not now. Now we need unity. So the only fact that I know is I can analyze who benefits the most out of this traumatic weekend that Macedonia
sorry,
had.
this is really coming back to the conspiracy theory I was talking about. I mean,
right.
you cannot say that the government organized this. How did they hire a group and tell them, stay there and we're going to kill you?
No,
14 of them died,
Svetin,
14 of the citizens were killed. This is ludicrous what you're saying, people.
I am never going to get to a point where everybody is just very happy they've got nothing more to add, which is always the good sign of a great debate, that there's always more to say. So I'm going to say thank you to Andrea, Yasmina, Nicola and Svetin as well. And the community wants to end where? Where are you going to end with us, Malika?
Well, I'll end with a tweet that is circulating online, not specifically from our community, but this is Alida, who took the breaking news that we heard just a little bit earlier, that there were resignations. And this is Alida, who says, hey, citizens of Macedonia, don't get so happy yet. It's good that these resignations happen, but the key player that must resign is still in power.
All right, thank you very much to everybody for taking part in this conversation, helping us understand what's happening in Macedonia. Meanwhile, let's move on to our next show, Paying to Serve. How can international volunteer tourism serve foreign communities without exploiting them? That conversation on the next AJ stream. See you soon.